Alexander, journey to the world's end. When ordinary men win, they celebrate. When Alexander won, he looked towards the distant horizon, where no one had dared to tread. He did not stop at glory. He yearned to transcend the very limits of man, to overcome himself. And the journey continued, towards the east, towards the world's end. They say destiny placed upon his shoulders a burden no mortal could bear, to conquer and unite the world. 1. The Battle of Gaugamela, conquering the impossible. In 331 BC, the Battle of Gaugamela, the decisive battle for the fate of the mighty Persian Empire. Darius III arrayed over 200,000 soldiers, many times Alexander's forces. The ground was leveled for hundreds of war chariots and cavalry to move relentlessly. But Alexander, with just 47,000 men, did the impossible. He bent the entire Persian formation with the great oblique order tactic, a supreme chess move of global military strategy. Breaking through the enemy's heart, tearing their lines apart, causing the Persian army to collapse like dominoes. Darius fled for the second time in humiliation. And this time, it was the last. In the dust of Gaugamela, there were no cheers from Alexander, only his gaze fixed on the rising dawn, where new horizons awaited. 2. Entering Babylon. The dream of uniting mankind. Babylon, the jewel of the East, ancient capital of empires, opened its gates to welcome Alexander. There was no bloodshed, no resistance. For the people there saw in him a king who brought the light of peace, not a savage conqueror. Alexander pardoned Darius's former officials, restored temples, and ordered the city rebuilt in a harmonious east-west blend. Amidst the ancient time-worn walls, Babylon reawakened. For him, the mission was not to possess, but to harmonize, to transform fragmented civilizations into one common heart, a single humanity. The dream of uniting mankind began here. 3. The Battle of Hydaspes. When shadows lurked around the halo, without stopping, Alexander pressed on, traversing wild Afghanistan, crossing the majestic Hindu Kush, and reaching the very end of India. In 326 BC, he confronted King Porus in the Battle of the Hydaspes. The terrain was unfavorable. The rain poured relentlessly, turning the battlefield into a quagmire. The enemy possessed giant war elephants, living tanks the Greek army had never before encountered. Alexander once again crossed the river under cover of night, striking the flank of Porus's forces, causing them to collapse. But after this victory, for the first time, he realized, victory no longer brought joy. Instead, it was a silent darkness, filled with exhaustion and pain encircling his soul. 4. The Mutiny, the loneliness of the immortal. At the Hydaspes River, when Alexander wanted to push even further, his soldiers refused for the first time. They had traveled 17,000 kilometers, fought incessantly, leaving families and homes behind, and now they only wanted to return. Alexander was not angry. He did not punish. He simply turned away in silence and wept. No one understood his dream. No one joined him in gazing towards the world's end. And Alexander, he who was called the Great, the Conqueror of all ages, began to feel alone within the very halo he had created. 5. Return to Babylon. Dawn and twilight. In 324 BC, Alexander returned to Babylon, where the dream of uniting mankind had once begun. He laid out grand plans, an empire connecting the entire world, without distinction between Greek or Eastern, with no conqueror and no conquered, where all people were citizens. He dreamed of a new dawn for humanity. But that light did not last. In 323 BC, at the age of 32, at the peak of his power and ambition, Alexander fell ill and died in a delirium amidst his unfinished plans. The cause remains unclear. Perhaps a severe illness, perhaps assassination, or perhaps his soul had traveled too far from this world, and the world itself had become too small to contain such a great spirit. Alexander fell, but his death was not an end. It was a new beginning for an immortal legacy. In 13 brief years, like a dream, he redrew the world map, built an empire vaster than Rome, even before Rome existed. He was not merely a great conqueror. He was an architect of the future, sowing the first seeds for the intermingling of East and West, shaping human history for millennia to come. His horse's hoofbeats have long silenced. His sword has faded into obscurity. But the question he left behind, about the limits of human endeavor, about the yearning to reach the world's end, still echoes. It challenges each of us. How far will you go to pursue your dreams? What limits will you cross to find the greatest version of yourself? Alexander. His name is not just a name in history books, but a rallying cry, a reminder of the extraordinary, of an unyielding will, of a heart that yearned to transcend all boundaries. And to this very day, his legend lives on, like a bright star in the sky of history. If you believe that legends never die, but only await retelling, then like, share, and subscribe to embark on the final chapters of other great journeys, where history becomes legend and dreams are reborn.